Compassionate Concessions is a non-profit service company that places vending machines in poverty-stricken parts of large metropolises. These vending machines contain basic first aid, sanitation, and nutrition supplies, which are provided at a price point which allows poverty-stricken populations to buy them. Each machine contains acetaminophen, ibuprofen, antibiotic ointment, Band-Aids, alcohol prep pads, splinter removers, burn cream, sunscreen, hand sanitizer, soap, sanitary wipes, diapers, tampons, toilet paper, Kleenex, protein bars, and bottled water. We currently have over 7,500 machines in 5 different cities in the United States and retain over 100 employees. We feel that our company is ready to begin expanding internationally. Argentina and Uruguay are the countries we wish to present to the board for consideration. We feel that these would suit our company well. Shakoya will now speak on climate, religion, education, and gender roles in Argentina.
So in Buenos Aires, Argentina, the climate, so basically in Buenos, the analysts have persistent of days with max T above 32 degrees Celsius and simultaneously minimum of T above 20 degrees C. In the warm season of October through November, during the 1959 through 2000 period showed that 77% of the spells lasted 1 or 2 days, and the longest one persisted for 12 consecutive days. Based on this distribution, and because the objective was to analyze more persistent events, a heat wave was defined when temperature was above the threshold for at least 3 consecutive days. I received this information from long-term variability of heat waves in Argentina and recurrence probability of severe 2008 heat wave in Buenos Aires, theoretically and applied climatology. Volume 124, number 3 through 4, May 2016. So in Argentina, the dominant religion in Buenos Aires is the Roman Catholic religion, taking over 92% of the population, while there are less than 20% of the population that would actually be practicing the religion. 2% practices the Protestant religion, and the other 2% being of Jewish religion. The last 4% of the population practices other religions, such as Islamic, Buddhism, and so forth. I received this information from the CIA government page, World Factbook. Education in Argentina. The social exclusion and school dropout rates have increased in the past decades, and find many adults in Argentina now find themselves at educational risk. Recently, programs like Adults 2000, Zero Desertion Plan, and Progress have been developed by the Ministry of Education to counter this dire outlook. Designed for adults to complete their education, these programs offer online courses, mentoring, financial aid, and child care for low-income families. And the gender roles. There's obvious male dominance and female submission, a traditional Latin pattern. In many aspects of the Argentine society, Hollander states that during the early 20th century, women were still subject to the control of their fathers and husbands due to their total judicial dependency on men inherited from Spanish legal tradition. This legacy contributes to the image of the Argentine woman as a housewife, mother, and the lovely decoration, weak, not very intelligent, and totally dependent on the male for her source of identification and status. Under Eva Perón, the Peronist Feminist Party, which strove for women's equality, was founded in 1949 and proclaimed the Peronist Feminist Party opened its doors to all of the women, and especially to the humble women who have been forgotten by the poets and the politicians. Evo Perón, however, provided only a limited challenge to the traditional sex roles for the Dutch emphasis. She portrayed herself as a humble, subordinate wife to her husband. The women's movement of the 1930s and the 1940s marked the beginning of a new era concerning the progression of women, which has continued with increasing strength till the present.
The economy in Argentina has been struggling since the 2008 recession, but is beginning to pick up. The World Factbook says in its article on Argentina, with the election of President Mauricio Macri in November 2015, Argentina began a historic political and economic transformation as his administration took steps to liberalize the Argentine economy, lifting capital controls, floating the peso, removing export controls on some commodities, cutting some energy subsidies, and reforming the country's official statistics. The electrical system in Argentina seems to work well for our purposes. They use the Type C and Type I electrical plugs, and adapters can easily be found for these for the vending machines. Also, doingbusiness.org says that the price of electricity in Buenos Aires is 10.6 US cents per kilowatt hour. Healthcare in Argentina is free, but the private hospitals have far superior healthcare, although it is more costly, which has led to an overcrowded public healthcare system. Culturegram's online edition has an article about Argentina's health, which states that access to safe water and sanitation is still lacking in some rural areas and in some suburban shanty towns. Culturegram's online edition also has an article about Argentina's transportation and communication systems, which states that they are well developed. Argentines have access to private cars, but taxis, subways, and buses and trains generally are the favored form of intracity transportation. Following a train crash in 2012 that killed 51 people, auditors identified systemic problems with the rail system, which was privatized in 1991 and has suffered from mismanagement and disrepair, prompting the government to nationalize the industry. Trains remain a common form of transportation, especially for those traveling into the capital from the suburbs for work. The subway system in Buenos Aires is efficient and inexpensive. A small portion of the population rides motorcycles for transportation, but bicycles tend to be reserved for recreation. Airlines link major cities in Argentina and neighboring countries. Buenos Aires is the most important seaport. And now Shakoya will tell us about the Uruguayan climate, religion, education, and gender roles.
And the climate in Montevideo, Uruguay. Basically, it's the ashes and dust resulting from 2011 eruptions of the Pujol volcano in Chile more than doubled monthly averages of the PM concentrations in Montevideo, Uruguay. Few studies have taken advantage of natural experiments to assess the relationship between ambient air pollution concentrations and birth outcomes. Works cited Balsa and exposure to particulate matter from the eruptions of the Pujol volcano and birth outcomes in Montevideo, Uruguay. Volume 124, number 11, November 2016. The religion in the Montevideo, Uruguay population is 66% of the Roman Catholic religion, while 2% of the population are Protestant and 2% of the population is Jewish. 30% of the population are non-professing of their religion. Education. The education quality of public schooling has been pointed out as one of the main barriers limiting the expansion and quality improvement of secondary education in the developing world. In Montevideo, Uruguay, despite significant expansions and access to secondary education in the past decades, low quality and dropout rates remain a critical challenge. Almost half of the Montevideo adolescents drop out of school at some point on the secondary education cycle. And nearly half of the 15-year-olds in the religion have difficulties mastering the most basic numeracy and reading skills. Many of these students come from low-income families in which they cannot afford the best education. Cited from Balsa A. Sid A. randomized impact evaluation of a tuition-free private school targeting low-income students in Uruguay. Journal of Applied Economics, number 1, 2016. Gender roles in Montevideo, Uruguay. Women were to assume a vital and legitimate role into shaping the national's community. Argentina's teacher president, Domingo Faustino Sarmiento, an admirer of Horace Mann, and authority for Uruguayan reformers, had long propagated the education of girls and the feminizing and professionalism of public teaching. The employment of women would offer them an alternative to lost artisan occupations and relieve government of incomparably higher costs of paying male instructors, while their training in dedicated institutions under the state supervision allowed for a replacement of traditional social beliefs and practices with liberal and Republican values and the behavior patterns of an emergent middle class. Thank you, and now here's Hannah.
The economy in Uruguay seems largely dependent on Argentina and Brazil. The World Factbook, in its article on the economy in Uruguay, says that following financial difficulties in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Uruguay's economic growth averaged 8% annually during the period 2004 to 2008. The 2008 to 2009 global financial crisis put a brake on Uruguay's vigorous growth, which decelerated to 2.6% in 2009. Nevertheless, the country managed to avoid a recession and keep positive growth rates, mainly through higher public expenditure and investment. GDP growth reached 8.9% in 2010, but slowed markedly in the period 2012 to 2016 as a result of a renewed slowdown in the global economy and in Uruguay's main trade partners and Mercosur counterparts, Argentina and Brazil. Reforms in those countries should give Uruguay an economic boost. Growth picked up in 2017. The electrical system in Uruguay does not seem to suit our needs very well. The voltage tends to fluctuate when a lot of people are using electricity, and there are also occasional power outages. Also, Uruguay uses 3 different types of plugs, the Type C, Type F, and Type L, which is more types than Argentina uses. The price of electricity in Montevideo, according to doingbusiness.org, is 17.6 US cents per kilowatt hour. And public health care is available for everyone in Uruguay. Cities of the World states in its article on Uruguay that paper products such as toilet paper, tissues, sanitary products, and paper towels are sold locally but are of poor quality and expensive. Culturegram's online edition, in its article on Uruguayan transportation and communication, says that roads are generally developed around major urban areas but are less so in rural areas. Key highways are paved and well maintained. Uruguay has international airway links. And Shakoya will now tell us about which country we think will be most suited for our purposes and why.
So as a team, we chose to go with the country of Buenos Aires, Argentina, due to it would actually be beneficial to the vending company that we do want to expand down to the city. Due to Uruguay's electricity issues of the power outages, it would not benefit us in any type of way, shape, or form. So that we did just come to the decision of doing the Argentina due to the electrical power, as well as the savings that we could endure with choosing to go with the Argentina electrical. I think, right? And